everybody. Welcome to the IronTrap podcast that we still haven't come up with a name for.
I think we're like 15 or 16 episodes in. We'll come up with a name one of these days.
Someday. So we've been doing a little bit of video and podcasts where we've just been kind of discussing different topics. This all kind of came about with like whenever we're traveling or we're just whatever, doing stuff, going to shows, there's a lot of times like topics that we like talk about, like, man, this is something that like you'll meet strangers or whatever we're talking to, and you find a topic and you start talking about it, and we're like, that would be kind of neat to discuss in a podcast. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to have some, before I get further, make sure you subscribe, all the
usual stuff. If you're listening to audio and you want to see the video, go to YouTube. If you're listening to the video and you want to hear the audio, go to all of your normal podcast platforms. It's available just about everywhere.
Just about everywhere. So we decided we would do some of these ones where we're talking, and we have a few lined up with it becoming show season and summertime and all that. It's a lot easier for us to do traveling and interviews with people. A lot of people's shops are not heated or set up well for doing interviews, and it's a lot easier in the summertime. So we have a handful of people on our list that are pretty interesting, so we'll hopefully sit down and do some of those, pepper them in this summer. Until now, you get to hear and see these two idiots talking about
ramble for hours about nonsense.
Yeah, we're trying not to be Joe Rogan and
7-hour podcast.
7-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Although we'd love to have that many listeners.
I will take all that money.
Yeah. But so the one, we just got back from Charlotte and Carlisle. Not just got back, but that was the last bit of traveling and events we did. And
I will say we got a ton of compliments on this podcast, positive feedback that people said they really enjoyed listening to us talk, which is very surprising.
Yeah, I was also surprised about that, and people were kind of chiming in person of what they thought, or whatever topics we were discussing, they were giving their feedback in person. So that was pretty cool, because I didn't really think anybody was listening or watching, because
there's a lot of podcasts and we're not that interesting.
Yeah. So we did Carlisle and Hershey, and we see a lot of people that we only see at certain events, or you only see a few times a year at swap meets, and typical with the springtime shows and swap meets at least on the East Coast. Talking about wintertime and whatever news going on in your life. And our theme this time was kind of the discussion of this hobby, or everyone in this hobby. We're all total hypocrites. So today's discussion is about being a hypocrite. I am most definitely one, and all of the different facets of how it is both funny and also some stuff we thought we'd discuss that's maybe a little more, I don't know, serious. But,
yeah, it's serious, but it's all in light humor. We're all the same way. It's funny to poke fun at each other because we all do the same thing essentially.
Yeah, but I'm kind of referencing like some of the stuff with the hobby, kind of going back to the last discussion of no young people getting into hobbies. Yeah. So I wanted to, I don't want to necessarily bitch the whole podcast, but I'm definitely going to give you some my peace of mind.
There'll be some mild ranting.
Mild ranting. So the hypocritical part that came up was like, I'm super bad with this, but like every time when we go to swap meets at shows, you haven't seen somebody for a while and whatever, and we have friends that we see a lot that I think the biggest one that came up was like one of our friends, or a couple of our friends. You talk to them, they're like, every swap meet, they're getting out of it.
Yeah.
I'm done. This is my last car. I'm selling everything. They're at the swap meet, and they're trying to sell us like all of their tools or whatever. Like say I'm getting out of Flatheads. You want to buy all my tools and extra blocks and whatever. And then you see them later in the year, and you're like, hey, or they'll call us. They'll be like, hey, I'm looking for a, whatever part. I'm like, I thought you said you were getting out of it all. Oh, well, I got this car and this thing came
Or they're
up.
in our booth buying stuff.
Yeah,
like, I'm done doing it. I'm getting rid of everything. And then they're handing you $100 bills, and you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
I mean, I will gladly accept your money, but didn't you just say you were done?
Yeah, one of the local guys we know, it's an older guy that's been selling forever. and his name's Gary. And Gary specializes in 40 Fords. Great guy. We're always trading between us. He buys a lot from us. We also buy from him. And he's like, I'm getting too old for this crap, and I'm gonna clean out my storage building, and I'm done, and blah blah blah. And he's calling us like all winter trying to sell us stuff that he's trying to get rid of, and he's passing the word on, and a bunch of people are like, oh, you hear Gary's getting out of it. First thing he does at Carlisle this year is walks in our booth and spends like
a lot of money
on stuff.
Yeah.
And,
I had a box of stuff set aside. He would call me every couple of weeks and be like, I saw you just put this on eBay, bring it to Carlisle. And then after he bought all of that, he was walking around our booth picking stuff up that he probably didn't have in stock of his own. Because everyone goes to Gary, because if you have a 40, Gary is the 40 guy to buy stuff from. Yeah. So it was just so funny because he's like, I'm done. I'm selling all of it and just buying boxes and boxes of stuff.
Right. And our other guy, John, we know, is like the same way. He's like, I'm done with this. I'm done building cars. I'm done building street cars. I'm just going to build like nostalgia race cars or whatever. And then like same thing. Then he's looking for something, or he's got a new car or whatever. So we're just, it's funny because we all do it. I mean, I do it all the time where I'm like, I'm on a spending ban. I'm not buying any more cars. I got no room. And then we're going somewhere obscure to buy it.
Or he's sending me Facebook Marketplace stuff, or oh, look at this auction with all this cool stuff. It's like, dude, didn't you just say you weren't spending any money?
That was like yesterday.
But yeah, today's a new day.
So I think that is just in our hobby that you can't.
And a good deal is a good deal.
Yeah.
And it's like you say you're not going to do it, and then someone dangles that carrot in front of your face. You're like, well, I said I wasn't going to, but you can't. You got to do it.
It's bad. For us, it's really bad with temptation. I think more so than others because a lot of it is, we're very thankful. A lot of it's coming to us. But some of the stuff that comes to us is like, whoa, I'd love, like, it's not even that it's a business deal. It's something I want for myself. So, like, how many 32 Roadsters can I keep? So I got to start, you got to make a decision, like, this is a little ridiculous. But, like, Mike and Steve get to hear it, like, every day when I walk out in the shop in the morning. I'm like, guys, I found this, whatever. This is the new, whatever my new crazy
My favorite
is.
thing is when I wake up in the morning and there's a text message from Matt of a screenshot of something. It's like, well, I thought we weren't buying anything. Where are we going? When should I tell my wife I'm leaving? That kind of stuff.
So that's definitely, the thing. And everybody, I think everybody's like back to the whole IronTrap concept. It goes back to that where you just can't get out of it until you die. You're stuck in it. So even though we say we're not going to.
There's always that one more car.
One more car, one more part, or and a lot of these guys were like, we see at swap meets, a lot of them are much older than us, in their 70s, potentially 80s. I'm done, or this is my last car, or this is whatever.
I always talk to customers on the phone because I answer 90% of the phone calls that come through our business number. So it'll just be like, I'm 85 and I'm building one last car and I need X, Y, and Z parts so I can get it back on the road. And that grip never loosens. You're just stuck, always building one more car.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, but yeah, so I think that, everybody is hypocritical. And it happens, like, everything in the hobby kind of happens that way. So, like, it even goes into when you're building a car. Again, a lot of these things I'm 125% guilty of.
This is also a therapy session for Matt. Yeah. He's also looking inward as he's.
I think of it every day when I wake up. I'm so stupid. Why am I doing this? I have more cars than I could ever finish in 2 lifetimes.
Yeah.
But like, the one that's funny is, especially with hot rods and customs, or hot rods specifically, we tend to make we tend to build race cars that we try to drive on the street.
Oh yeah.
So like, you build, especially with like the flathead stuff, you build this wild flathead that really back in the day would have been.
The free T is right here.
Free T's right there. That's a similar one. You build something that back in the day probably would have been more of like either a full-on show car or a drag car. And then we're trying to figure out how to drive it on the street, or guys building engines with huge blowers and wild cams, and the thing you can't even idle and it's bucking, but it's cool as hell. For those 15 seconds when you pull into the show or swap meet, and years of work, it's somehow worth it. But it's always like, this one I'm not going to make as crazy. Like I did it we laughed about the 38 convertible. I'm like, this is going to be the easy one. We're just going to bolt stuff together and throw stock parts on and do this and that.
And then out comes the lead.
Yeah, then we're doing this and we're just, yeah.
It's every hobby, almost every hobby, there's some form of snowballing.
Yeah.
You say you're going to do this, and then you get so wrapped up in it, and it just snowballs out of control, and then you're building a full-on show car. The 3T was that.
Yeah.
Just about every car you've built, for the most part, it's like, we're just going to do it this way, and then 6 months later, it's a totally different mess.
Yeah, so but we see that all the time where people just, the car started out as a driver, and the guy, whoever it is you're modifying, you're doing whatever, you're like, the typical, while I'm there, well, I found this little bit of rust while I'm there, and the next thing you know, it's getting like a crazy paint job. And, well, since I'm painting it nice, I might as well chrome everything.
And driver quality, like the term when we sell parts, driver quality, it's a usable part, may not be super nice because it's for a driver. And then there's people that look at that part and they go, it's super junky. Like people's quantifications of driver are totally different because I've driven rusty pieces of junk. Yep. That's considered a driver to me. And then other dudes are like, it has to be perfect, nice, straight, no scratches.
Yeah, we've struggled with that with the parts business a lot because everybody's, even when we just, not even specifically driver quality, but everybody's idea of what is nice is different. So some guys' driver quality is one step under NOS.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't call that
factory takeoff.
Yeah, like I wouldn't call that driver quality. Driver quality is going to have chips or a little bit of rust or whatever. So, that's the thing. It's like we get that a lot where guys are like, I'm just building a driver, and then they start saying, well, I'm looking for, and they're telling us like perfect parts. You're like, that's not a driver. That's like you're building a show car. Like that's.
They want NOS parts for driver quality, but they're not happy with the driver quality. It has to be mint perfect.
But you're putting it in satin paint, so it's a driver.
Yeah.
They're doing all the body work and making it as nice as a show car, but you put satin paint on it. That doesn't mean it's a driver. It just means it has satin paint.
Yeah.
It's still a show car. So we get, it's hilarious with how every facet of this hobby is, we're all just lying to ourselves or being hypocrites about whatever. And
every facet, even the AACA, there's parts of that we Matt and I talked about this beforehand. The AACA is
it's a lot of the let's say fancier organizations. We shouldn't just pigeonhole the AACA, but they're the one that there's some stuff with them that kind of makes me a little confused.
Because you have what do they call it? Is it the Survivor
Preservation Award? The
preservation class, that's right. So you can have a car that's original and shitty, junky looking.
I like that we just jump right to shitty. It could be shitty.
I'll just jump right to it. I've seen some of this stuff at Hershey. It's not that nice. So, but it's preservation. But if you have a hot rod, the Schroll Coupe is a perfect example. It's basically as it was built in the 50s, it was preserved. But because it's a hot rod, it doesn't classify for the preservation class because it's a hot rod and it's junky. And it's like these weird...
And those
none
guys,
of it mixes together.
And they'll look down on you. What I thought is funny is like the remarks that you get as being a hot rodder going to some of these events, that you will be, not that they're all outright rude, but people almost talk down to you.
It's very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's tongue-in-cheek. People don't realize they're doing it. They talk almost down to you because your car's junky, because it's a Survivor or it's got patina or whatever. But if that was a 1937 Packard with a V12 and it had original paint and it was, whatever, then it would be like, wow, look at this artifact. It's amazing. But because it's not deemed as a high enough, you look at Ferraris and Porsches that are at these Amelia Island type shows, and they show up and the car is shitty. It's the paint's falling off. It's exactly what we're doing. But because it's an expensive car or it's an original car, it's okay. So like that and the with AACA, the one that really grinds my gears, and I comment in the AACA like Facebook group and some of the stuff just to rile people up sometimes. But like the AACA has, like when you go to the fall meet in Hershey, they have a race car class. And they run in the old track. You do like an exhibition, and they just run around the track, start them up, whatever. It can be literally a hot rod, but it has a fucking number on the door. So it could be a circle track car or let's say a drag car. And because it has documented history of being a drag car, it can be in the race car class. But literally, you could take the numbers off the door, and it's exactly what we build and do. So it's like, they're okay with acknowledging race cars, modified cars. These cars a lot of them are even further from being an original car.
I mean, every year there's just full-on
drag cars,
70s sprint cars.
Yeah,
that they're sprint cars. They're not even like a modified
factory body.
Yeah.
So like those vehicles are okay, but they won't have a historic hot rod class. I will be the loudest person on the planet about this. I think it's kind of ridiculous that at this point they will have a class, and I'm not just saying AACA. There's other organizations that do that, but like they won't have a class for historic hot rods, but they will have a race car class that the cars are literally like adjacent. They're the same thing. We're using the same parts, the same everything. Our cars have documentation, with what they were, and it's a real hot rod. But that's not okay. And it's kind of funny because even like some of the fancier shows are now having a hot rod class.
Amelia Island.
Yeah.
The Cookie Tea won was it Amelia Island or?
I think it was Amelia Island. But like they have a class for real old famous. I mean, a lot of the cars that are in there are famous hot rods, but like a true old hot rods are being restored and put in there, and they have documentation that the car was in a magazine or raced or was owned by so-and-so or whatever. And I think it's fantastic that these cars are getting restored to a really high level and they're getting put out there and they're competing. Not my thing, like as far as the world I want to be in, but like that's cool that we're acknowledging that these cars are an actual piece of history and they should be, there should be some notoriety where the AACA is like, nope, no hot rods. We're going to put you in if you have a hot rod car for sale, you got to go out in left field in the thing. But if you have a race car, that's okay. Yeah. So you could have a 32 3-window coupe that has some shitty bars welded in it for a roll cage as a circle track car with a hopped up flathead and a number on the door. Totally cool. If I have the same car but no bars in it and it's maybe got some nice gauges in the gauge panel, like that's not okay to compete. So I just think back to our conversation from last podcast, like, why is the hobby dying, or is the hobby dying? Like, when you have groups like this that are making the decisions, the fine line of what is okay to bring on a show field, like, I would be totally different if AACA just said no modified cars
all
whatsoever.
Original, yeah.
Okay.
My favorite at Hershey too is walking around when people are like complaining about hot rodders at Hershey, because like we sell a lot of our stuff is hot rod parts. And you just walk around and you hear people complaining about hot rodders, and it's hot rodders are helping keep the hobby alive.
That show field, if they didn't let you have any
modified
hot
stuff.
rodders there, I think you'd lose a huge percentage of the swap meet.
Oh, it would probably fit in one field then.
Yeah. So.
One parking lot essentially. But I always laugh so hard when I'm walking around and I do it on purpose when people are like, "Oh, what do you have? What is this going on?" And then I like say it's going on a hot rod, and they get so offended. It's hilarious. Just because I know it upsets them, I mention it just because there's no reason to get so offended over something that trivial.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, everybody has their own right for an opinion.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, hot rodding has been around for so long that like this isn't a new thing. Like back in the day, the hoodlums just starting out and it was like a nuisance. Now it's a thing. It's huge. So like, why are we not allowing these cars that are historic to be, to compete or do any of that stuff? So I think it would be very, very cool to see some of that bleed over. And it's cool to see it at Amelia Island or whatever, at some of the shows. At Concourse, you're starting to see them. Given a lot of that is very high-end stuff. So
it goes back to the high-value thing.
Yeah.
A lot of those super early famous hot rods have a lot of value attached to them. So they're bringing some of that in. You can show your car at an AAC event. It just has to be touring. You have to modify it enough that it's just a touring modification.
Trigger.
That was a perfect segue. I get them with it.
Yeah, so like we joke about that a lot too. So this is more when you get into some of the clubs. This isn't necessary AACA, but like
it's like every antique car club.
Any antique car club, especially the Model A, early Ford type clubs we're exposed to the most. And those clubs have been changing over the years. I think they're a lot less funny about hot rodding. But we laugh because like a Model A that has, or a Model T that has a 2-speed rear, or like an auxiliary transmission or whatever. That's
a cigarette lighter hanging off the dash so you can charge your cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, the green 32 Roadster is literally a perfect example of that. It had all like this kooky stuff clipped under the dash for touring purposes. So when the car was shown, you could like hide it up under the dash or take it off. So it was normal, but it's all modifications at the end of the day.
Yeah, just because you're hiding the modifications doesn't mean that it's not modified.
Exactly.
And at what point are you going to, but like even like with the touring thing, guys will have like a bigger carburetor or dual carbs. They'll have like on a Model A, they'll have a high compression head.
Or an electric fan.
And because it's for touring, everybody's cool with it, and that guy can be in the club and he can tour around. But because my car's faster than yours and it's louder exhaust.
It has more than 5 modifications to it. It's no longer considered touring.
It's just how the car looks.
Yeah.
It's just kind of unusual, and that's like the hypocritical thing. And I even find myself trying to catch myself, because I do it a lot with, I've gotten better over the years, but with like the traditional thing, or like old school or period correct, or I like to use the word nostalgia these days, because I've even been finding myself, I'm being a hypocrite. Like 5 or 10 years ago, I would have never put anything but a generator on the car. And we've been putting, we just did 2 engines with power gens. And like, I used to just be a dork about it. And I was like, that's an alternator hidden in a generator. I could tell it's a generator. And at the end of the day, like when I had a bunch of cars that like generators wouldn't charge right, or you drive the car a bunch at low RPMs with the headlights on and then it wouldn't start the next day, I'm like, this is kind of stupid. I probably should, So like I was being hypocritical, and like a lot of the traditional thing is just as bad as the AACA. Cause
100%.
Like snobby people, and I was the same way. I still am a little bit, with like, oh, that's got an electric fan or whatever, and you'd be kind of like turn your nose at it. But like, I don't know. I started doing that. The T, I hate an electric fan because the thing runs hot, because it's got a radiator that's freaking size of a soup can. So like,
and all the dudes, like a lot of the cars that you see with that kind of stuff that's non-traditional are usually older guys that probably have had that car for 50 years, and it's like a form of evolution. They drive the car a bunch, and they're tired of it overheating, or if they don't catch it right, it overheats. Give up. Let's just put it. It's the same as this thing. You fight it a dozen times, and you're like, fuck it, we're putting an electric fan on it. Throw that traditional thing right out the window, because it becomes a headache after a while.
Yeah, I've tried to have the conversations with myself looking within. It's like, what do you want to do with the car? So like, if you only want to take it around town 15 minutes away or 20 minutes away, then like, I guess it doesn't really matter. But like, or you only want to drive it during the daytime. But like, as I've been having problems with cars over the last handful of years, not even problems, just like stuff that's annoyance, then it's like, okay, I don't like this. How do we fix it? Well, we have the technology. So I think with the traditional thing, you see that a lot. And that's where you get into, are we trying to do some sort of like, are we playing dress up here? Because you're not wearing vintage sneakers, so like, how far do you take it? So putting a power gen on, in my head, I'm like, it still looks nostalgic. It still looks old school. I'm not a fan of putting like a freaking Mopar generator right on the top and then having everything else old school on the engine, because I think it ruins the look a little bit, in my opinion. But power gens are expensive, so I get why somebody would throw a $120 Chevy one-wire alternator on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just trying to be better about that stuff because it's like, in the end of the day, the person probably did it because they wanted it to run better or drive better. So I guess that's getting older and growing up. You're kind of like, why am I being snobby about this? But there's plenty of old guys that are still snobby about stuff.
Oh, yeah.
With the traditional thing.
And it's also funny that there's a lot of people that are hung up on the term, on like the building traditional stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'll use non-traditional parts. Like
we get that a lot.
They're like, I'm building a traditional car, but it's going to have a 5-speed and a 9-inch rear. And it's like, it's kind of, I mean, the 9-inch rear is kind of traditional, but like, I'm building a Dry Lakes era car.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't use 9-inch rears then. I mean, I can understand taking a banjo rear and doing the 9-inch axle conversions to get some of the modern technology for a rear, but saying you're building a nostalgia car and then doing all this modern stuff to it.
What's the traditional term they're using?
Yeah.
I'm building a traditional hot rod just like a kid in the 40s would have built a car, and then they're like, I want to put a T5 in it, and I want to put a 9-inch in it. And
there's nothing wrong with any of those, but you're not building a pre-war style build if you're using all of that. You're building a car has a pre-war style look, but it's not a pre-war style car because you have all modern driveline in it, basically.
Yeah. So we get, with a lot of what we do with the business, with the parts business now, is we get a lot of people that are calling us, it's their first build, or they've always wanted to build one. And Mike or myself have these conversations with customers, and they're not knowingly doing that. I just try and have the conversation with them, like, you're not building a car from the 40s. You're building a car that looks a certain way, but you don't. You know, you're building a street rod. In the end of the day, like, just because it has a flat head and it looks old school and you have steel wheels on it, but you're putting like 9-inch rear and a T5 and you're doing all this other stuff, it's really just, it's what they would have called a street rod in the 60s or
in the
50s,
70s, yeah,
whatever. So I think you don't need to pigeonhole your thing in that. If you're going to do that, then you need to go all the way. Everything old, every nut and bolt you can find is original.
Square nuts only.
Yeah. So I've tried to get better about myself because I found that I was being a hypocrite. I was like, I have not, like, you know, I'd be all nerdy about it, but then I would have a nylock somewhere in the suspension just because it was what I had laying around, or I had a Speedway part that was in the bin and it's like, it's good enough. I don't feel like waiting for a, original style. And I'm like, well, why am I being snobby about stuff? Because I'm no better. So like, at least when you use the nostalgic term, you're like, it's a nostalgia build. I'm building like a 50s style car, and as soon as you're like hardcore, like, this is what I'm doing, you better be like,
don't talk about it, be about it.
Yeah, you better be about it all the way.
Yeah.
So I think that's, in the traditional world, that is a huge thing with how big it's gotten and how a lot of people are getting into it. You don't have to use the traditional word. Like, I feel like it's such a
it is overused. Because I mean, in the end of the day, we're using modern practices to build a car the traditional way, but kind of not really, because traditional would have been like out in the driveway with no tools,
coat hanger and a
so it's like we're emulating building a traditional hot rod, but you're using modern technology, tools, that kind of stuff. So it's like, if you want to say you build a traditional hot rod, you can't use anything modern. You've really got to be about it.
You got to really go that far.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the hobby in general is awesome. It's just that I found myself being snobby over the years because I got so heavy into the old style cars, but then I just started realizing there's a reason guys evolved with this stuff over the years. So if you could find a way to make it fit for you, what you want the car to be, and you don't need to use some special term. I mean, It doesn't, it's just like music. A band doesn't have to label themselves or something, so.
Is there anything else hypocritical about the hobby?
Yeah, I mean, I think the people talking about, the one thing we see is the discussion on, like group, well, now it's Facebook groups. I always want to say forums, but like.
It was forums one day.
Yeah. So people complaining about the cost of the hobby, antique car hobby or old car hobby, being so expensive, and the average guy's priced out of the market, and you see these guys going on rants, but that's the same guy that, like, when he goes to sell his car, he's not selling it for a discount. You can't bitch about the housing market and then sell your house for the
Top
cost
of the market. Yeah.
Like, no one's going out there and selling their car for 1950s prices because the hobby's priced out. Like, I've always been psyched that stuff I own is keeping the value or going up in value or whatever, or I bought it right that I'm not going to lose money. But like, to bitch about the hobby and then you're a hypocrite if you're then selling your street rod for, you're asking top dollar for it, because that doesn't jive. I don't understand that. So I've tried, again, a lot of the stuff I think I used to do a little bit. I just bitch about people bitch. We hear it at swap meets a lot, like guys bitching about, oh, that guy over there is like, he's so expensive, or like, I don't even want to check his booth out. He's so expensive.
I mean, we do that too,
but I try and say I can't justify what he asks, or we use retail as our word amongst us. We use that guy's everything there is retail, which if we're not looking to spend retail, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't walk in and pay retail if it was a part I really needed. But when you're out hunting for deals, you don't. But like, we hear these guys walk in the swap meet, they come by our booth and like, everything's so overpriced here. But then when they're selling, they're charging the same. Like, I don't understand that. Like, so I've tried to train myself to more say like, I just can't justify what he's asking. That doesn't mean it's not worth that. That just doesn't mean it to me.
I just don't need it that bad today.
Yeah, I don't need it that bad.
Tomorrow he might wake up and decide he needs it that bad.
Yeah, but being upset that like stuff costs more money, it doesn't make sense to me. So I think everybody in a hobby, we're all cheap asses. So we are hypocritical about saying stuff like that, like, it's really expensive. That guy's asking too much for that car. And it's like, it's especially with hot rods and antique cars in general, most of them are so unique. You can't, it's what you justify is what the car's worth, because you don't, if that car was a different color or had a different engine, then you might think it's worth that, So I don't know. I think we tend to do it. I've been trying to train myself not to do it because it is a negative cycle you get into. And a lot of guys you see at swap meets, people we see, they're just always, every time you see them, almost always negative. It's like, it sucks. Everything's overpriced. I can't find anything. And, I came here on Saturday at Carlisle and everything's either overpriced or they don't have any early stuff. It's like, well, it kind of was, all the deals are gone on Wednesday. So, if you stay at the bar until 2 a.m., you're going to get 2 a.m.
Some slim pickings.
You're going to get 2 a.m. matches.
Yeah.
So don't be mad. That's what you're getting. You're getting last call parts.
Yeah, and we've seen some last call parts. Not good.
Oh man.
I guess the other thing, we've talked about this before, like hypocritical, like the small block Chevy topic, because the hypocritical thing is everyone says, they're not traditional, they are overdone, but they were traditional.
Yeah, they're as traditional as it gets. I mean,
in 55, 56, 57, there was guys ripping them out of smashed cars.
Yep.
Same thing as 49, 50, 51 when Cadillac and Oldsmobiles came out.
Yep.
Dudes were ripping them out and then chroming them and putting them in their show car. So, it's as traditional as any of the other things. They're just overdone, so everyone looks down on them and is like, small block Chevy, that's not a traditional. Like the Skelly 34 is a perfect example. The car was built in what, 60?
Yeah, it was started in like the early 60s. I think the car was, 62 or 3 or something like that, or whenever he started building it. But yeah, it seems to be a popular thing again. I hate to say it, but especially on the Facebook groups and stuff, you get a sounding board for kind of closed-minded people, and you get that, like a guy will buy a car and you'll get some guy will just jump on them and, hey, check out my new 32 Ford I got, and some guy will come, I hope you're not putting some stupid Chevy in it because you'd be an idiot if you
That's
did that.
not traditional. It has a small block Chevy.
Like, oh my God, calm down. So, I don't know. I don't like, they're not my favorite engine, but it's a damn good engine. It makes sense. And you're starting to see them done better, I would say, a lot more.
More of the vintage stuff, less of the 350 the later stuff.
Yeah, billet parts.
Yeah.
They went in the Summit catalog and ordered
a whole page.
Yeah. So I think they look great when guys are doing.
When you date them to look like
yeah.
a traditional engine.
Yeah, so like I just bought. We have a 283, two 283s.
Surprise.
Sitting around that are from Tri-5s, I believe.
Yeah.
And like we were at Charlotte and I bought a set of chrome Chevrolet script valve covers because I think it would be cool in the right car. It's not my favorite engine, the one I would pick, but I will say after having the Skelly car, the thing ran, even though that engine was like never been rebuilt, smoked a little bit.
It's kind of tired.
A little tired, but it still ran well, started every time.
That was probably the most reliable. I don't think we ever had to do anything. Once it was on the road.
Every now and then, anything that I had to do to it was stuff that was just being an old car.
Yeah.
You get crap in the idle air circuit and it would idle stupid, or every now and then when it would sit, the automatic choke would stop.
But it started.
Every time. It always started.
Yeah.
It ran great. And plenty of power for even though it was a 265. So like I get it. I totally get the idea, but I don't understand why like shitting on it. Like I don't know. I honestly, a small block Chevy is more traditional than a small block Ford. I don't really like small block Fords. I think they're kind of an ugly engine. Like they're great engines for muscle car stuff, but I think in early Fords they're not really that cool.
It's
not
just
my
dudes
thing.
that are not dudes, people that are obsessed with you keep branded
Ford or the Ford.
Yeah, the branded engine in the car, but that's not what hot rodding's about. It's just using whatever you have laying around. Mom crashed her 55 Chevy 3 weeks ago, and I blew up my flathead. Well, that's exactly what you do. You just, there's a good engine, but a junk car, and my hot rod needs an engine, so let's make this work, and we're back to hot rodding.
But the hypocritical thing, guys will talk crap on having a small block Chevy, but then they'll have a flathead with a one-wire Chevy alternator in it. So putting that Chevy alternator is okay, but if you put the whole engine in, it doesn't. That doesn't. Everything better be Ford on that damn engine. So I don't see guys putting Ford alternators on stuff. Everything's one-wire GM
stuff. Yeah.
GM alternators.
So we all need to do better and just stop shitting on everyone and just. We're all doing the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's just training yourself. That's what I'm trying to work on a lot with myself is being more open-minded and stuff that I'm not into. You find a better way to look at it rather than, it's not the other guys charging too much. I just don't think I could afford, justify paying that. So I look at houses on the market or properties and you're like, I would never pay that for that, whatever. But somebody else is dying to, pay.
They want to pay that and they're super happy with it.
Yeah. So I want something with a monster ass garage on the property and here we go. And that's why I got a deal because nobody else wanted this place.
Exactly.
Now here we are. So, yeah, we just thought it was funny with all that different, stuff.
So, since we talked about, Charlotte and Carlisle, what are your thoughts on the two events? Obviously, we talked about Charlotte a little bit at one of our last unloading videos. It wasn't great. It was kind of empty. But Carlisle, what was your thoughts on attendance and the event?
So for anybody that didn't watch the unloading video, I think Charlotte is doing a very good job to shoot themselves in the foot.
I don't think it's
It's not the Hornet's Nest region.
Yeah, it's not the AACA Hornet's Nest. It's the track.
It's the track.
Which I can understand. They probably get way more money to rent the track to someone using it for like testing versus the swap meet. So it's a business thing probably.
Yeah, so the Speedway is doing their best job to
kill the swap meet.
I've been going for 5-7 years. I don't remember.
It was way before COVID, so probably 7 years.
Yeah, so like my first handful of years, it was kick-ass. It was really good. And again, people have been going for much longer than me. It was way better back then, but like they cut the track in half and pretty much got rid of half the vendors. A lot of vendors didn't go outside in the fields. They just didn't come back. I mean, we talked to a few guys we would go to see every year at Charlotte when we saw them at different events, and they're like, F that event. I'm never going back there. I had this great space. I was in it for 37 years, and they took it. So that show is it's not good. We found a bunch of stuff, but we're getting to the point where like we go down with 4 of us. we kind of continue in a tradition of the older guys in our area. They've been doing the trip for years. And the tradition kind of now has been that you bring an empty car trailer down, a enclosed trailer, truck with 4 guys. We split the cost, and then we just fill the trailer. You can buy whatever you want. Well, like, honestly, we're getting to the point where we're almost like, I don't know if bringing the trailer is worth it. Like,
yeah, I mean, we barely put anything in the trailer this year.
we could have fit everything in the bed.
Yeah, it would have been full, but it would have fit.
So that's kind of disappointing when you're going, for us, 10 hours?
Yeah, with a trailer, it's about 10 hours, yeah.
10 hours each way, hotels, food, all that stuff. So that's a good instance of, like, not necessarily the AACA doing a bad job or that region doing a bad job.
It's advertised super well. It's on I see, ads for it on Facebook and that kind of stuff. So it's not them not pushing the event. We see this with a lot of events. When things change that don't benefit the show, it hurts the show big time. We've seen car shows that change the day or the venue, and it kills the show, unfortunately. So the Speedway is basically doing the job of killing the show without the AACA really doing anything. But there's rumors that there's going to be no one in the track next year for spring. In the fall, they're doing it this year because someone rented the track. So they're talking about potentially in the spring, we have spots inside the track that will get moved out into the field, which is going to be
a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
But on the other side, on the flip side, Carlisle was 50-year anniversary this year.
Yeah, it's 50th anniversary for the fairgrounds in general. I don't think it's just for Spring Carlisle. I think it's 50th year for the fairgrounds.
Okay. But there, on the flip side, I would say that Carlisle, ever since COVID, is doing a fantastic job.
I think there was empty spots in the rows, but I think it's from people just not coming. But I think they sold more spots this year than ever because up on the hill, it was all the way down against, like up on top of the hill. It was all the way against. I've never seen people in some of those spots all the way against the fence.
Yeah, you're right. I did walk all the way out to the fence. There was like a row I missed. It was like literally like
in the grass.
In the grass, yeah. And I was like, there can't be vendors over there. And I'm like, whoa, there's a whole row.
Yeah, I've never seen. There was a lot of empty spaces. I think it was just from people not coming. Like they have spaces, they renew them, and they just didn't come. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't on our side this year.
And you see people, like we have some neighbors that show up for one day. They buy a space and they park their normal car in it.
Which I don't know how that's cost effective because the person a couple spaces down from us has 2 spots and they showed up for one day. It's $120 a spot for 2. It's so much money. But I've never seen that many vendors at Carlisle in the past, say, 5. I haven't been going to Carlisle that long, so 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
It was packed.
Yeah, I think ever since Carlisle during COVID fought the state and won so much, so to speak, I think that as swap meters and car people were kind of like, hell yeah, they kind of stuck their neck out, and it worked out. And I think all of that's been going well. So I think Carlisle's been doing a good job of advertising and reaching
pushing,
out to vendors and all the stuff, the way they communicate. Renewing your spaces is fairly,
You can do it online, right?
Yeah, I believe you can. They have actual dedicated people that are in the office 9 to 5 or like normal hours. So if I have a question about my space or I want to renew, I can call and actually get somebody. It's not like the third Thursday of the month from 9 a.m. to 10:30 is the only time you can call.
Don't they have a website where you can see spaces available too or something like that?
Yeah.
Because I remember there was a space next to us at one of the events. Someone called us to let us know it was available. So it's like super easy to see everything. They're very easy to deal with.
Yeah, so it's obviously a for-profit business, so it makes sense for them to do everything they can to sell more spaces. But I think it's good to see.
I mean, the car crowd was slam packed too with actual cars, not
that's true.
Pickup trucks for parking.
It was fuller than I've seen it in a long time. So, but I think the swap meet in general, they are not being hypocrites. They're doing what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're getting the swap meet. For the most part, everything's pretty good there. I mean, I don't have nothing that you could change there that isn't like geographical. It sucks with the up and down and whatever.
Dude, some of the people that vend on the side of the car corral hill, they got like 15 inches of wood under their tires to level the trailer. And it's so sketchy
It's
looking.
scary as hell.
Oh my God.
And they're camping in some of them.
And like the crazy wind that we had this year. I could imagine sleeping soundly in one of those rolling down the hill. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the best, not the best, but it's one of the better like fairgrounds that we've been to for a swap meet. Just the way everything's laid out and organized insanely well.
Yeah, and they pretty much like open the gates whenever. Like, so we know people that are showing up. Like the show starts on Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday's official attendance day.
But there's people pulling in the Saturday before, like with big RVs and stuff. So like they're not closing the gates and making everybody sit there and wait, until everybody rush in. So like almost anytime we come in to vend, we never sit in a line.
It's the best for loading in. It's so like we come on Monday to set the tent up and get like some stuff set up because there's no one really shopping there's some people shopping, but it's nice to come in and like Hershey's the polar opposite just because of the time constraints of Hershey. Like you show up and you're like slinging the tent and like we're in a mad rush for Hershey or Carlisle. It's real laid back and we just set up at our own pace. Tearing down on the other hand is the opposite.
But we just want to get out of there.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, I think that's swap meet is doing a good job and it's getting bigger every time
and there's more older stuff coming out.
Yes.
I saw a surprising amount I said that right, I think.
Surprising amount of
pre-war non-Ford parts.
Oh.
Like there was that Buick that was for sale up on top of the hill. Like I saw vendors with like obviously pre-war Fords are super popular, so you see a ton of parts. Mm-hmm. But I saw stuff of, we'll say, for lack of better terms, off-brand pre-war parts, which is very surprising because that's normally what you see at Hershey or a swap meet that's more dedicated to that. So it was pretty surprising to see that kind of stuff.
And I think I had more than one person come into our booth. I really only hang out in our booth all day on Fridays. I'm usually out meandering around, having fun.
Or until he's defeated and doesn't buy anything.
Yeah. So when I was there was multiple people that came in and were like, I've never seen so much speed equipment in like any swap meet ever. Now, given these people don't travel like we do, but like they were right. There was a lot of people with like spreads of speed equipment laid out. So it was like pretty much whatever you were looking for.
I saw a ton of Pontiac speed equipment, Hemi, like stuff. You normally see a ton of obviously flathead stuff because there's so much of it.
Yep.
And small block Chevy. But like I saw nailhead stuff. I saw Pontiac stuff, which is super uncommon.
Yeah,
I was very, very surprised.
And like I saw a bunch of Chevy inline six speed
and
equipment.
Mopar stuff, yeah.
Mopar stuff.
I didn't see any Cadillac stuff, but Cadillac stuff's hard to find in general.
I know. I wish I would have found Cadillac stuff. But there's a pretty good amount, and I think again because they're doing a good job of growing the event, that now more people are coming back again and trying to sell. So it's pretty exciting because it's like we said, we went down to Charlotte, and normally that would be when I get all excited because there's vendors we don't see often.
Yeah.
And you would think down in the South, there's people pulling stuff out of the deep South and bringing it for sale. That's been the folklore for Charlotte. But now it's like Carlisle's more exciting.
100%.
Finding just as much or more interesting stuff at Carlisle. So, and I found some great couple pieces for myself that were quite rare, and we really do every year. I just kind of take it for granted because it's
in our backyard.
In our backyard. So,
and hopefully it doesn't, but if Charlotte does continue to go down, Matt and I have talked about potentially going to Portland, which is the exact same weekend.
And it's huge.
And invading the Pacific Northwest to buy parts out there.
Yeah, at least walk around and
hang out with Matt Field from Seattle Speed.
Go see what we can find in their neck of the woods.
But anything
Kramer!
else? Oh, yeah, Steve.
Steve's here. Hi, Steve.
It's payday. That's why Steve's
Steve's
here.
looking for a check. Damn.
Yeah.
Keep talking. Keep this going.
Is there anything else?
Yeah.
I think we covered all of the stuff we talked about.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it all. So I think we have a handful of events coming up soon. People are always asking us about what we're going to or what we're doing. I mentioned the Northeast Vintage Drags. I'm going to try and make it to that. It's only like 3 weeks away. And
you got like a month. It's the end of the month, end of May.
I didn't book anything for place to stay or whatever, but I think Kate might be on board with going. So might take a car out there and some parts. The big one I wanted to mention that's a new show this year, our friends with the Gasket Goons. Again, if you live far away, this means nothing. You can just shut this off and stop listening.
Or just fast forward to the end.
So Gasket Goons, they put on a really good one-day show that's in the end of the summer normally, or in the fall. Really, it's basically fall.
September.
Yeah, so they're putting a show on for the first year in June, second weekend in June.
June 8th.
Yes. So June 8th, they're putting that on in Macungie, where the Wheels of Time show is. They know how to put on a good show. It's usually a good time. Bands, I think they're going to do a good job. But if you're thinking about going to a show that weekend, maybe check it out. We're going to be there. I'm probably not going to do a big setup this year.
You'll be there. I will not be there.
Mike will not be there, but I'll probably be there, maybe Steve. And so just drive a car and hang out. But I just figured I'd mention it. Those guys are great guys. We've been helping out with the swap meet for years, and I've been going since the first Gasket Goons show. And I think that this summer one's going to be really good. So check it out. It should be a good vibe, and that's probably the next couple of things going on. We're not going to be doing nearly as much traveling this year, or at least this summer, which we'll talk about in an upcoming video. But we will not be doing quite as much traveling and running around as we normally do. I try not to be a hypocrite.
Damn it, I was about to say that. I was like, this is where we clip this for when Matt buys a bunch of stuff in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I did do that over the winter. I was like, I don't go anywhere cold.
And all we did was go cold places.
I don't go anywhere colder than here, and we don't travel in the winter unless it's somewhere warmer and we're not buying parts.
30 instances of us breaking that rule.
Yeah, but I'm really going to try. We have some stuff going on.
Some big stuff.
Big stuff going on. So we're going to talk about that in an upcoming video, podcast, whatever. But that's kind of the wrap-up. So thank you guys for listening or watching. And definitely if you have a suggestion for a future topic, we'd love to hear it.
Or if you have another thing that's hypocritical about the hobby, please leave it down below. We'd love to continue the conversation in the comments.
Let's hear what you're a hypocrite about. I probably am too. I just forgot about it.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.